Usually, when we discuss relationships, we tend to look at them through the lens of monogamy. There's a strong heteronormative assumption that a valid romantic relationship, quote unquote, is a relationship of two people, one man plus one woman. This assumption is slowly changing as the LGBTQ community gains more visibility in the culture and media, but the relationships that exist beyond that 1+1 binary, either by the gender identity of involved people or their relationship configuration, are still fairly uncommon. In this short presentation, you will learn the basic one-on-one on non-monogamy, basic terms used in the discourse about such relationships, and how to distinguish if a person is non-monogamous or just cheating. I hope you'll enjoy! First of all, we need to distinguish non-monogamy from consensual non-monogamy, which I'll sometimes call CNM for short. What is consent then? Let's use a great analogy for offering tea that I took from the video Tea and Consent that you can also see on the YouTube. Let's say you want to offer your friend a tea and they say, "No, thank you." Is that a reason to give them the tea? Of course not, they don't want it. Needless to say, if you yell at them or try to manipulate them into drinking that fabulous cup of tea, you definitely shouldn't give them any tea in the first place. What if your friend enthusiastically says, "Yes, please," but when you bring them tea, they change their mind? Don't force them to drink tea. If you want to see the whole video, it will be linked in the resources, but I hope you get the idea. Consent is when a person enthusiastically says yes to do something and they are not forced, manipulated, threatened in any way to do it. Consent is when your friend says, "Yes, make me some tea, please," and you're happy to serve them a great cup of tea. What is the difference between non-monogamy and consensual non-monogamy? Let's consider two scenarios. Scenario 1. Barbie and Ken are in a monogamous relationship for 5 years. Barbie is satisfied with her relationship, though she noticed Ken recently became kind of distant. It turns out that Ken has a secret affair with his co-worker. Scenario 2. Carl and Emma have been married for many years. Carl meets Tony at work and introduces her to his wife. Eventually, Carl starts a relationship with Tony. Emma, Carl's wife, knows about that and even calls Tony Carl's other wife sometimes. Do these two scenarios consist of non-monogamy? Yes, because both Ken and Carl have their +1 involved. Is there consent in both of the scenarios? No, because in the scenario 1, Barbie is unaware of the situation, so she couldn't have given consent to this. In scenario 2, Emma meets Tony and knows about the situation, accepts it, and welcomes Tony as a part of the family. By the way, if any names of the people in the scenario 2 sound familiar, then you're right, because Carl in scenario 2 is Carl Jung. Fun fact, right? There are many possible configurations of relationships under the big umbrella of consensual non-monogamy. There are people whose relationship can be described as open. We have folks who are polyamorous, polyfidelitas, or relationship anarchists. Many people engage in swinging or cuckolding. There's no bad or good ways of doing non-monogamy if it's fully consensual and meets the needs of every person involved. Before we jump into definitions of some of the terms under this umbrella, there's an important distinction that needs to be pointed out before we start. Polygamy is often a first association when people hear the phrase non-monogamy. Technically, it's a form of non-monogamy for sure, but there's a nuance in it that needs to be addressed. Polygamy, as well as monogamy, derives from a Greek word gamos, which means marriage. Poly means many, so by etymology meaning of polygamy is many marriages. There are many societies where marrying multiple people is possible. The most common way of polygamy is polygyny, where one man is allowed to marry more than one woman, but these women are only married to him and no one else. Polygamy and polygyny sound similar, but they mean different things. There's also a type of polygamy called polyandry, where one woman marries more than one man. Polygynandry is a mix of both, where more than one man can marry more than one woman. It's complicated, right? So to sum up this section, please remember that. First, polyamory doesn't equal polygamy, because polyamory, by definition, doesn't refer to marriage. 2. Polygamy is not the same as polygyny, though polygyny is the most often observed form of polygamy. It's like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. 3. It depends on the situation whether a polygamous marriage happened consensually or not, and that's why I didn't include polygamy in the CNM umbrella. Polygamy and monogamy don't imply coercion, but polygamy is often associated with forced marriage. It's worth to remember that historically it wasn't rare to force someone into monogamous marriage for economic, political, or social privileges. Back to the definitions from the umbrella. To make it easier, I will use fictional characters to define a situation that can be labeled to be a particular relationship style. Let's start with polyamory, which was slightly foreshadowed before when talking about marriages. Polyamory is an approach to relationships that allows to partake in multiple romantic relationships at the same time, of course consensually. For example, Anna is in a poly relationship with Paul, and she loves Paul very dearly. Anna later on meets John and she falls in love with him. Paul is satisfied that Anna has a second boyfriend. He and John sometimes have a boyfriend get-together when they hang out and play video games. Paul isn't involved in a romantic relationship with John currently, but he doesn't exclude that as a possibility in the future. Polyfidelity is a type of polyamory when there's more than two people involved in a relationship with each other and they don't allow any romantic encounters outside the relationship. An example: Frida is in a romantic relationship with Helen and Steve. Helen and Steve are also romantically involved with each other. Frida, Helen, and Steve aren't looking for anybody else to join them and they feel comfortable with this setting. They have discussed the boundaries of this relationship and everybody agreed that the romantic or sexual relationship outside the three of them would be a betrayal of trust. An open relationship can largely overlap with the stories I told you before, but there's usually a difference in hierarchy. In an open relationship, the couple stays emotionally exclusive to each other, so falling in love with another person would be a deal breaker, but having sex with someone else is okay. The couple in an open relationship always comes first as it's treated as a primary relationship, while outside relationships are treated as secondaries. An example: Olivia and Tom are married for 3 years. They started the relationship as a monogamous one, but they both eventually agreed that they want to open the relationship to gain new exciting experiences. Olivia met Jake on Tinder and informed him from the start that she's married to Tom and she's open to having casual sex in a friends with benefits setting rather than anything romantic. Jake is okay with that because he wasn't looking for anything serious either, and he started a non-exclusive sexual relationship with Olivia. Olivia's husband Tom knows about her dates with Jake and accepts them. Tom is the only person that Olivia says "I love you" to. The next possible types of non-monogamy are swinging and cuckolding. They are on the same slide because both of them are similar in terms of emphasis on exploring one's sexuality. Swinging happens when some people change partners during sexual activities. For example, Anna and Anthony, couple A, are friends with Bethany and Bob, couple B. Two couples meet together and they decide it would be fun to change sex partners just to see how it looks like to try with someone else. Everyone was interested in the idea, so Anna is having sex with Bob and Bethany is having sex with Anthony. But it's not the only possible way of swinging, of course. Swinging might happen at some special events dedicated for this particular community as well. Cuckolding is an activity that allows one's partner to have sex with someone else while you are watching. People engage in this kind of activity because it might be seen as a punishment in a BDSM context, or they get aroused by observation. It's worth repeating once again here that both swinging and cuckolding require consent from every person involved, just like any other ethical non-monogamous activity. Also, because these activities involve having sex with others, obviously, it's crucial to remember to use protection, condoms and dental dams, and to get tested for STIs regularly. If your sex health is compromised, for example, if you're HIV positive, it's very important to disclose your status beforehand to everyone involved so they can make an informed decision and choose how they can protect their own sex health in this kind of situation. I know, Talking about STIs isn't very sexy, but having this kind of conversation lowers the risk for everyone and also shows that you are a person who cares about the safety of others, so win win. This is the last type we're going to cover today, and it's in my opinion the hardest to explain. Previous types of non-monogamy were often focused on couples, let's call them primary relationships, and the others, which we'll call secondary relationships. People who use the term relationship anarchy believe that every relationship should be treated independently without any hierarchies. This kind of relationship setting is very flexible and independent from labels. So, to say it shortly, relationship anarchy can be described as anything goes if it's consensual and fair to everyone. And yay, we're at the end of our adventure! I hope this presentation helped to shed a light on misconceptions around non-monogamous relationships as well as highlighted the importance of consent regardless of your preferred relationship style. We now know how to distinguish ethical non-monogamy from cheating and how to distinguish polygamy from polyamory. We've also learned new words describing non-monogamous relationships like polyamory, open relationships, relationship anarchy, cuckolding, and swinging. I believe that the very fact that you're still listening is proof that you're ready to reflect on your own views about human connections and think about love in a different way without the unfair stigma or shame. Remember, no matter if you're monogamous, polyamorous, or you reject labels altogether, don't be afraid to ethically explore your own rules for love because love is beautiful. Thank you for listening.